The 1990s was a decade that brought us some of the most memorable and influential games in the history of the JRPG genre. From the beloved turn-based combat systems to the heartfelt storylines and characters, the games of this era have left us a lasting impact on the gaming industry. Whether you were a fan of the classic titles from the Super Nintendo or the revolutionary games from the PlayStation and Nintendo 64, there was no shortage of excellent JRPGs to choose from. So, let's take a trip down memory lane and explore some of the best JRPGs from the 1990s that continue to be cherished by gamers today. Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana saw Square begin a brand new JRPG series alongside Final Fantasy, with the game set to be marketed as a new brand franchise, despite being a direct sequel to 1991's Final Fantasy adventure. It was released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and quickly garnered a loyal following. Secret of Mana sold approximately 2 million copies, and it performed really well with critics. Although the series never quite achieved the same success as Final Fantasy. However, it remains a beloved classic among fans and is often regarded as one of the best JRPGs of its era. The game's real-time combat system, co-op, multiplayer feature, and enchanting soundtrack are just a few of the many reasons why it is still cherished to this day. Dragon Quest IV: Chapters of the Chosen. Dragon Quest IV: Chapters of the Chosen is a classic JRPG that showcases traditional turn-based combat and an iconic cast design by Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama. As the fourth entry in the iconic Dragon Quest franchise, the game features a unique structure where players experience numerous storylines that follow the game's various protagonists. Throughout the game, all of these stories become interwoven, providing an engaging and immersive experience. The game's unique structure and memorable characters have earned it a place on this list of the best JRPGs of the 90s. Fans of the genre will not want to miss out on this classic entry in the Dragon Quest series. Grandia. Grandia is a hidden gem of an RPG that offers a rich fantasy world on the brink of a technological boom. The game features an excellent battle system that builds upon the foundations set by its spiritual predecessor, Lunar. The narrative follows Justin and his quest to uncover the secrets of an ancient civilization after inheriting a magical stone. If you're looking for a fun adventure with a unique story and satisfying combat, Grandia is definitely worth checking out. Don't sleep on this classic title. Final Fantasy IV. Known as Final Fantasy II in its original US release, is a classic and legendary JRPG. However, while a lot of fans admire its heroic journey, large cast of characters, and themes of family and redemption, others, however, criticize it for being slow-paced, simplistic, and flat. Regardless, the game is undeniably successful and a pioneering release in the US for the Super Nintendo, subsequently gaining widespread acclaim as a classic title on numerous platforms. Final Fantasy IV epitomizes the JRPG genre with its turn-based combat, emphasis on level grinding, and vast world. Super Mario RPG: Legend of the Seven Stars. Super Mario RPG was a departure from the traditional platformer game that players had come to expect from the Super Mario series. Square took a big risk by transforming the game into a turn-based JRPG similar to Final Fantasy. The game, which used 3D models instead of the traditional 2D style, is one of the best-looking titles on the SNES. Despite being an RPG, the game still managed to include some of the traditional Mario elements such as punching floating question blocks. Super Mario RPG sold approximately 2 million copies and was praised by critics, spawning the popular Paper Mario series that has been released on every Nintendo console since the N64. If you're a fan of Mario and JRPGs, this one is definitely worth checking out. Alundra. Alundra is an action RPG that didn't get the attention it deserved, but it's a gem that is worth checking out. Unlike the majority of JRPGs of its era, Alundra adopts a real-time combat system that does away with turn-based mechanics, which made it feel refreshing. Despite the shift in mechanics, Alundra's writing and story received praise from its deft and dark themes. Many reviews lauded the game's unique puzzle design, which challenged players to think outside the box. The game's difficulty is a standout feature, and it's worth mentioning that this game is not for the faint of heart. Lunar, Eternal Blue. Lunar may not have the most riveting story, but it makes up for it with its lovable characters. Hiro and Lucia's charming chemistry is particularly noteworthy, with Hiro standing out as a brave and relatable protagonist who doesn't waste time whining about his quests. In an unusual move, the English localization team injected the script with more humor, fourth wall breaks, and nods to American pop culture. These changes helped make the game more engaging for Western audiences. Overall, Lunar may not be a standout title in terms of plot, but its endearing characters and clever localization make it a noteworthy JRPG of the 90s. Xenogears. Often touted as one of the best games in the genre, Xenogears still manages to impress with its story, gameplay, and characters. Even with some flaws and aged mechanics, the game is still a great example of a classic JRPG. One of the game's most notable features is its vast and varied setting, complete with atmospheric towns filled with secrets, minigames, and rousing music. Additionally, the game's story is complex and features psycho-religious themes, science fiction, and plenty of emotion. With an excellent cast of characters, including the beloved Saitan Uzuki, the game also features various modes of battle and noisome villains to keep players engaged. Few JRPGs can match the level of spirited and playable gameplay offered by Xenogears, making it a timeless classic in the genre. Phantasy Star 4: The End of the Millennium. Phantasy Star 4: The End of the Millennium was a 1993 JRPG that left an indelible mark on the genre, despite some mixed reviews at the time. It was the final entry in the Phantasy Star series before a 7-year hiatus, with the series returning as an MMORPG. The game's high price points, retailing at almost $100, may have contributed to its initial criticism, but it has since become a beloved classic with a dedicated fanbase. The game features a compelling story, memorable characters, and classic turn-based combat, making it a standout title of the 16-bit era. Final Fantasy VII. When discussing the most influential JRPGs of all time, it's impossible to overlook Final Fantasy VII. The game's debut on the PlayStation was a turning point in the industry, as it was the first non-Nintendo console to receive a mainline Final Fantasy title. Its 3D graphics and emphasis on story and characters set a new standard for the genre. Building upon its predecessors, Final Fantasy VII introduced the Materia system, allowing players to customize and enhance their characters' abilities. The game's iconic cast and unforgettable music also helped cement its place in gaming history. Even today, many still consider Final Fantasy VII to be not only the best JRPG ever made, but one of the greatest video games of all time. Luffia 2: Rise of the Sinistrals. Luffia 2: Rise of the Sinistrals is a great JRPG that improved upon its predecessor in many ways. The game was well received by fans of the original and introduced new mechanics such as the ability to capture and raise capsule monsters to fight alongside you. The dungeons no longer had random encounters, which was a welcome change. While the game is technically a prequel to the original Luffia, it's better to play Luffia 2 first to get the full impact of its ending. If you're a fan of classic JRPGs or even Pokemon, Luffia 2 is definitely worth checking out. Shining Force 2. Shining Force 2 is a classic strategy RPG that tells a story of good versus evil, complete with the typical sword-wielding, silent protagonist who saves fancy-haired royalty. It's one of the best examples of this cliché that flooded the zeitgeist with engrossing music and perfectly retro 16-bit graphics. Despite its age, the game has held up well and still provides a fun and engaging experience many years later. Shining Force 2 was one of the first successful strategy RPGs and has influenced many developers who copied its formula. If you're looking for a classic game that has stood the test of time, look no further than Shining Force 2. Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII was a game that left a lasting impression in the JRPG genre, whether for better or for worse. Released in 1999, it was the second game in the series to hit the original PlayStation and featured some of the most impressive visuals seen in an RPG at the time. The game's approach to its gameplay mechanics, such as the use of Guardian Forces and the removal of MP, divided opinions amongst players and critics alike. However, the story and visual presentation were praised by many and cemented the game's place in the Final Fantasy canon. Whether it's your cup of tea or not, there's no denying the impact Final Fantasy VIII had on the genre. Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber. The Ogre Battle series is known for its mature story and setting it apart from other JRPGs. If you're looking for a classic tactical RPG experience, Ogre Battle 64 is a game that should definitely be on your list. The game features real-time combat, similar to its predecessors on the SNES, and presents a considerable challenge for players. Despite its mixed reception among fans and critics regarding its departure from traditional gameplay mechanics, Ogre Battle 64 remains a standout title in the tactical RPG genre. The best JRPGs of the 1990s, a golden age for gaming. If you haven't played any of these games, then you're in for a treat. And if you have, then we hope we brought back some fond memories. Now, be sure to check out our Best Indie RPGs video for even more great RPGs to add to your gaming collection.